Right, I guess we are live. What's up,
Yes.
everybody? I would say welcome to episode number 270 of Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries. And anybody who jumps in, nobody's watching right now, but when you jump in later on, you're gonna be like, "What the hell is this? This isn't the normal Dancing with Ghosts content that I signed up for." Well, what this is I had a podcast for like 6 or 7 years with this fella to my right or your left or whatever. He had his own YouTube channel, and we had a podcast called Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries. And we kind of hung up the podcast a few months ago because, quite frankly, we just kind of got tired. The podcast was about the show Unsolved Mysteries, and we kind of ran out of cases to talk about. The time, I know any angry video game nerd listeners are going to love this excuse, but the time thing was a problem for us. Like, we didn't have a lot of time to
Yeah.
uh to do the podcast in general. We still really don't. It's kind of magic that Mike's even able to especially since I thought my internet was going to be down. There's a whole bunch of shit that happened, as what normally does when it comes to live stuff. There's a bunch of random shit that always happens that you're not expecting, that holds you up. But anyway, so this is kind of like a video that's obviously on my Dancing with Ghosts channel. And it's also going to be a podcast later on because I'm going to rip the audio from this video and I'm going to release it as episode number 270 of our podcast. Which, if you're interested in listening to my podcast I had for 6 years about unsolved mysteries, you can go to you can just search Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries, and it's on any streaming platform, or it should be anyway, because I'm still paying for it, damn it. But yeah, so recently, in recent news, Mike, the John Cosgrove and Terry Moyer, their production company or whatever the hell, they dropped this it's seemingly out of nowhere, this
Yeah.
unsolved mysteries behind the legacy, or behind the legend, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Behind the Legacy, I think that's what it was. It was also a co-production with FilmRise, who released the original Unsolved Mystery series on streaming and YouTube a while back. I think it might have been less of a John Cosgrove and Terry Moyer decision and more of a FilmRise decision, because FilmRise did a Behind the Legacy special on Forensic Files
Oh,
a year ago.
like a similar
So
format.
similar format, very similar setup, around the same length. I think the Forensic Files special was shorter by like 10 minutes, but it's the same sort of thing. Like, interview people who were involved with the show, the producers, talk about certain cases, so on and so forth. So I
Yeah,
think it was really more of a FilmRise choice. But it could have also been, John Cosgrove and Terry Moyer thing. So they could put themselves out there and, be on
that doesn't
camera.
really surprise me that this was something that they had done for another show previously, because though it did have its moments that were definitely like stuff that we haven't seen before as fans.
Yeah.
It did feel very like by the numbers. As far as documentaries go, it was very sparse. It was no
Yes.
frills.
It was thin, and it's one of those things where I don't know if I want to say it's disappointing, because I wasn't expecting
Right, right.
a 2 hour long retrospective, kind of documentary from John Cosgrove and Terry Moyer. Like, I just wasn't expecting that, considering what they did with the reboot on Netflix and what they did with their own podcast and so on. So I wasn't really expecting like anything that was like super super in depth. And I didn't really know about the Forensic Files thing until after I saw the Behind the Legacy special. I know that it was shown at some Alamo Drafthouse theaters, but the people who got to attend it live also got to see some segments of the show live, and I don't know exactly which segments they were, but they actually got to watch segments of Unsolved Mysteries in the theater. So I think that
Huh.
probably would have been pretty cool. And that's why the runtime was like over 90 minutes on Alamo on their end, because the special's only like 55 minutes. I
Yeah.
still think it's worth bringing back the podcast from the dead and resuscitating it for the spooky season of October, because there are things about it that were really fun and special as a fan of the show, like the outtakes of Robert Stack.
Mhm.
Like those were just
Which
gold.
I felt like surely they had more outtakes than just that.
Yeah,
I was like waiting for them to like really show some like him really like breaking his on-screen character and saying something funny or doing something, but they showed like three outtakes total, like
yeah,
him fumbling with the dog or
yeah.
whatever. Like I don't, maybe they're trying to keep the air of him being
Uh-huh.
this consummate like TV host and professional, so they didn't want to show too many. Well, he probably didn't fuck up all that much, honestly, because he was
No.
a seasoned pro by
No.
that point. But yeah, I don't know. Like,
My
it,
favorite one is when he's like in the trench coat and it looks like he's like psyching himself up or something
yeah,
for the shoot, and he's just doing the moving around and like punching the air with the big
uh,
smile on his face.
yeah. So just from like a production standpoint, things that I noticed about this documentary, it feels almost weird calling it a documentary because
This is
it
special.
yeah, it felt more like a special that you'd see on TV to like kind of fill up
Yeah.
time than
Yeah.
something that would be this premium like Netflix thing or something like that. Um, the backgrounds, like you could tell they're all like sitting in front of a green screen, and
Hmm.
they did a poor job keying out people, the backgrounds on certain people than others. For instance, and this bothered me to no end. I was like, how could they have put this out, like on a as like a professional product? Because like anytime you see John Cosgrove, one of the co-creators or whatever, his background, you can tell like there's some artifacting to like his right,
Yeah.
where then
That might be the stream itself though.
no, I
I
think
don't know if that's actually because I watched it live and I don't remember it looking that bad. So it might be just how things are recorded with
hmm.
Pluto, which isn't. I don't even think it's showing it in HD. So when you're recording a stream that's not even in HD from Pluto TV full screen, I think that might be why the artifacting
Well, it wasn't on
appeared.
other people's
See, that's the
interview.
thing too. Yeah, it wasn't. So maybe it
It
was on
was
the special and I just didn't notice it.
yeah, like well, when I first saw it, I was like, wow, they couldn't even key out the green screen like good enough. So you have this like weird artifacting that's going on, which looked very amateur to me. Um,
Uh-huh.
and they like I thought that like man, you couldn't have gotten like any fans of the show on there
Yeah.
to interview, like say like a celebrity fan, like
Uh-huh.
there, because there's got to be someone in Hollywood who's like a huge fan of the show who would have like totally gone and but oh, I loved watching this growing up. It's like you didn't get any. All you got was the staff that worked on the show and the executive producers, and that was it. You didn't even get like an executive from like NBC on there, or like
No.
Warren Littlefield or something like that, like who
No.
was around during the time, like oh yeah, this show was really special to our network and yada yada yada. It's like you didn't get any of that. It was just the people who worked on the show and John and Terry, the two people who love to sue people, myself included. You got the two litigious bastards and
Uh-huh.
the staff some of the staff that worked on the show or whatever. And that was it, and I was like, well, that's fucking, that's kind of weak.
Yeah.
So
But I
that was,
still had fun with it. I still liked it, but yeah, there definitely were a lot of moments where it felt thin and it could have had more. But what was there, it was nice to see. It was just a pleasant surprise to see anything like this about the original Unsolved Mysteries. Like
yeah.
I
And I
thought
liked
like
how,
this would never happen, and then it just randomly appears
yeah,
mysteriously out of nowhere.
I liked how they didn't address the new Unsolved Mysteries whatsoever, and
No,
they didn't address the
the Dennis
fucking Dennis
Farina,
Farina. Yeah, they didn't address
yeah,
that
the
one
Dennis
either.
Farina reboot.
they're just like, yeah, let's just forget that those ever happened and not talk about those.
I gotta
I
be
mean,
honest though, I would have liked to have heard the story about that. That's one of the things that I think was missing from this special, or this, because saying it's a documentary is a bit of a stretch.
yeah,
It's barely a documentary. I would have liked to have heard them talk about what happened when they switched from one network to the next. Talk about the whole stuff with Virginia Madsen and Keely Shea Smith and all of
yeah,
that,
yeah, that would have been
and
interesting.
and why that didn't work out. Talk about the move to Lifetime. Excuse me. Talk about the move to Lifetime, and maybe discuss the Spike TV reboot, and briefly talk about
There
Netflix.
was a portion of the special where some guy was like, I don't remember who it was, but he was like, Unsolved Mysteries has never been off air. It's been on TV this whole time, and there's something special about
I
that.
know.
I'm like, bullshit. It's not always been on the air. There
No.
was like a whole ass decade where you could not find the show,
No, it
and
stopped. It was the reruns weren't even on Lifetime anymore. There
right
wasn't anywhere to actually watch it
that
officially, other than the DVD sets.
right. That's when they started putting out the DVDs because like they weren't really airing it anymore. And like I don't know why he said like that. That's such
No.
a easily provably false comment to make. I didn't like why would you? Because I remember those times because it was the
Dark
the
Ages.
dark ages where and I don't and this was before I even met you, so I didn't
Mhm.
have the DVD or the VHS rips or whatever even. So
No.
all I had was the fucking box set, which I drained that well dry, watching
Uh-huh.
those segments over and over, the same segments over and over again. And I knew there was like hundreds of other segments that I could have been watching that I'd been missing or whatever. But it was like, oh well, like this is what you got, deal with it. But yeah, I mean, in a way, I am glad that they stuck to the OG,
Yes.
version that everyone knows and loves and remembers. But yeah, it would have been nice hearing about all that. They probably don't really want to get into like the other
It might be a
iterations.
legal thing too. I'm wondering, maybe if it's maybe that there's like a legal thing, like
I doubt it'd be a
they
legal thing
can't
because
necessarily talk about some of those other incarnations of the show, or talk about it in depth and in detail about certain
I
things
think
that
I think John and
happened.
Terry knows. I think they know that the Farina version sucked major ass. I think they are well aware that that was a horrible mistake.
I just would have liked to have heard, from the source,
Well, look,
from the place where it all started.
we know the Dennis Farina version. We know that that was ass. We know that that sucked, and it was something we had to do at the time. I needed to make my rent payments, and I don't know. Dennis Farina was, he was eating a Philly cheesesteak outside of Chicago, and I asked him to come through. I don't know, but yeah, no, I mean, yeah, and then for the first time in the special, we finally get to see what Terry Moyer looks
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the closely guarded Terry Moyer, like
Yes.
the other co-creator or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and she actually talked, which was like
Yes.
I had searched the internet for foot video of her or whatever before just because I was curious. I was like, well, I know what
Couldn't
John
find
looks like.
anything.
Yeah, you couldn't find anything. Like she did a good job at scrubbing the internet of her presence, but she finally made an appearance.
She even allowed the special to have some photos from back in the day of
Yeah,
her,
right. So you could see like,
when
oh,
she was
okay.
younger, when she was working on the show. Um, the structure of the special, it starts out with they start talking about, I believe, like the initial idea and the creation of the show,
With
where
the four NBC specials.
yeah, and before those specials there actually was some other specials for NBC called Missing,
Yeah.
and apparently they did well enough that NBC was like, "Hey, do you have any more of that? Do you have anything similar to that?" And then they decided to do these unsolved mysteries specials. And the specials initially, like, NBC was just, hey, we like that. They did well enough. We could use something to fill a time slot. Can you give us some more? They weren't necessarily expecting like this big hit
Yeah.
right off the bat. Um, that's also another thing I honestly would have liked to have seen discussed is more detail on the specials, especially the specials before Robert Stack became the host. Like they show like clips. They show some footage of I believe Raymond Burr, and they don't really talk about it. They're just like, oh, there were some specials before the original run of the show, and then they show a clip of Raymond
They were
Burr.
strictly business on this one. They're like, let's stick to the Stack stuff and
Yes.
keep it at that, like
Yeah.
no before, no after. There was only
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
even the discussion about Stack and like finding him and all that was pretty short. They were just like, oh, he was perfect.
it
He
was
was
very
great.
it
He
was
had the
very
right.
like rudimentary, like how
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, he was this classic Hollywood guy and he had a great voice and and he loved doing the show. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, okay. Very meaty stuff there, guys.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed any of that. I would have never guessed that he was a old movie star in Hollywood and that he liked doing the show. Man, you guys really enlightened me on that one. I loved so they go into the special and they're talking about how it the kind of the conception of the show and how like the audience could call in and help solve the mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
And Terry Moyer was talking about how she was like dubious as to if the show would even be successful because it's like, well, it's a bunch of mysteries that have never been solved. Who's going to want to watch that? But
Yeah.
then I realized that the people were actually solving the mysteries, so it became interactive. It was the only show where the audience could interact or whatever. And they talked about how like the
Yeah.
show kind of became this anthology series where like we're not only talking about like murder cases, but now we're talking about UFOs and we're talking about I think that one of the workers on the show was like, we had 34 different categories or some crazy thing
Yeah.
like that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, damn, I didn't know they had that much. I knew they had unexplained death, paranormal, PsyMed, fucking final plea, fraud, lost loves. But I was like, man, I didn't know they had. I don't know what all those other ones are. And
Strange Legends. They
well,
had that one.
see,
Treasure.
I that was just for the box set. They almost like changed the categories because like on the box set it says no, you're right. No, they did have, I think they hold on. I have the box set right here. Let me
Or
fucking
is it Mysterious Legends or something? It's definitely something with that. Or no, I think that was just maybe that was just unexplained. Maybe they were just under
yeah, I think it
unexplained.
was the unexplained, the VHS
Yeah.
strips
Yeah.
had it right. So okay, so like in the box set, for instance, they call it bizarre murders. They never called it bizarre
No.
murders on the show. They have like
It was murder, unexplained
no,
death,
it was wanted.
wanted, yeah.
And then this one is what, UFOs. They never called it UFO. They called it like the unexplained, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, miracles. Oh, this is burning my hand. Uh, they never called it miracles. They called it something else. Yeah, Strange Legends, which is probably
Yeah.
my favorite of the DVDs. They didn't call it that either. So I know we're like nerding out like to the max degree right now, but whatever. We both like Unsolved Mysteries a lot. So fuck off. No, actually, don't fuck off. That's probably not the right message to convey on a live
No.
stream.
No,
So
absolutely not.
the idea is we want people here watching and listening because I could have just called Mike on the phone and talked about this shit. Boy, did I get all entangled from getting that goddamn box set from my closet.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, so they go on to talk about the show and how it started getting successful and how it was always in like usually in like the top 10 as far as ratings were concerned. I don't think they ever showed it being number 1, which I thought it was at one point, but
No.
they never showed that. They had it at, like, number
I don't
4.
know. I don't think it ever was number 1. It was just close. Which is a big deal for a show like that at that time. Because a lot of the number 1 stuff, it's, maybe a big budget TV
Miami Vice.
movie special, like the day after, something along that line, or a big hit show that's scripted with actors. And this
Yeah.
is scripted too and had actors, but not on the same level. And they talk about Robert Stack. They show some outtakes. They show the clips of him trying to deal with this unruly puppy, which is just honestly really cute. And they kind of the interviewer kind of hyped that up a little bit, like he was really not. He just couldn't deal with the thing, and then you show the clip, and it's not like he's that upset
Yeah. He's
at
like he's
the
like,
puppy.
I just can't work with this motherfucking dog." And then
Yeah.
then it shows Robert Stack, he's like, I know," trying to calm dog. And it's like, yeah, he
Yeah.
doesn't really look all that upset with the dog.
No.
So then they kind of like go on to I was surprised at how self-aware they were at because one of the big things that's brought up when you talk about unsolved mysteries is the horrible acting and the corny,
Yes.
cheesy actors and all
Yes.
that. And they actually like leaned a lot more into that than what I thought. I was
Yeah.
actually pretty surprised at their level of self-awareness with the
Well,
actors. And
they explained a lot that really did clarify a lot of things. And I honestly kind of assumed this anyway with this show, is that a lot of the actors were probably just people who were inexperienced, people who just were willing to do the job, or people who were actually a part of the real case who agreed to be on the show.
yes,
And they talked about how working with the real people can be difficult because they're not actors. They talked about how they would go to a certain location where the crime or the legend occurred, or the unexplained event, and then they would find actors from like the local community college or
so
something.
that was something that was kind of like that was definitely a new piece of information that I did not know.
Hmm.
The so unsolved mysteries. If something happened in Bozeman, Montana, they would fly to Bozeman, Montana, and film at the location of where the shit went down. I thought that was really cool, and I mean, they could have easily just recreated it in somewhere in Burbank or Los Angeles or
Hmm.
something, but no, they actually went to the location, and because they did that, that's why the actors were so bad a lot of times because they had to just get actors from that region, from that
Yes.
local theater group or whatever, and
Yeah.
so you just kind of got what you got wherever you happen to be. And so they were commenting on, they showed some scenes where the acting was really bad.
Yeah.
And again, it was like, wow, good on you for like
They
acknowledging.
also made a brief commentary on the wigs
Yeah,
and
they
the
had
mustaches, and
they have a whole that somebody they brought up a fan page, the one and only time they brought up any kind of fan
I think it
anything.
was the Instagram, right? I
Yeah, it
think.
was an Instagram called Wigs of Unsolved Mysteries, because just some of the wigs that they used were really bad because they were trying to, if an actor was portraying somebody in real life, they would try to make that actor look like the person as much as possible, and sometimes they went overboard on the wigs situation. And one of the people that they showed in that example was Marie Hilly,
Oh yeah,
the chick who like killed her pretty
yeah.
much her whole
Poison.
family.
Yeah, poisoned her whole family. Yeah.
Yeah, aside from the son, there was only one who made it out alive. But
Uh-huh.
I even remember like thinking how like kind of bad that when she came back as her sister, You
Uh-huh.
know how bad that wig looked and how she just looked like, oh, that was bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
They also talked about some of I guess the audience's favorite segments or favorite cases, and one of them was actually the whackers, which I was honestly kind of surprised by.
yeah,
I
as
get
soon
it.
as
I totally understand why, but it was kind of surprising.
yeah, I mean that was definitely a good case. The whackers. But my whole thing with that was as we I think when we covered it is when I really like kind of opened my eyes. It's like, dude, clearly those old people were doing all that shit to themselves for attention. It's the only thing that made sense. So I was a little surprised that the whacker. I mean, yes, on paper, these two old people who are terrorized for years on end by this unknown person, steals their stuff, brings it back, apparently attacks the grandma, but not too severely, almost like Cindy James, where it's conceivable that she could have done all these things to herself. Um,
They also mentioned Cindy James as well.
yeah, Cindy James was the first segment they showed. Okay, and I do kind of feel like Cindy James is probably the default, like most favorite segment off that show. But going back to the Whackers, it's like, they have their fucking adult children all scoping outside the house, waiting for this person to show up. They're in the shadows. The only people who know that they're there are the whackers themselves, the old folks. And as soon as everyone calls it a night and they decide that nothing's going to happen, something happens. As soon as the kids go away and
So
everyone
you think the whackers whack themselves?
yeah, it's like the only thing that makes sense, like that they're doing it for attention, and people are crazy enough to do that kind of shit. Um, but yeah, I'll read some of these chats right quick. Patrick Reeves, love the podcast, miss having it. I hope you guys get something new out soon. Well, which I think we're shooting for 2024. But I do want to talk. I want to have a talk with Mike about how I want to do this new podcast. Slap him around a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What's up, Kyle S? Hungry Skeleton says, hey, Dance with Ghosts, found your stuff from Red Cow. Love your stuff and look forward to future stuff and finishing what I haven't seen yet. Yes, there. Well, thank you for watching the Red Cow stuff. I love those dudes. I have a whole treasure trove of crap that I've made over the years that I put a lot of work into, a lot of time, a lot of editing, and never got any love. But now that my channel is surpassed 10K subscribers, it seems like my videos are averaging higher, like double what they used to. Because like I would say like an average video for me back in the day, view wise, would be like 200 to 300 views,
Yeah,
and
that's
now it's like 600 to 1,000 views, like average, if not higher. If I'm talking about anything pop culture related that's like new, then it'll definitely crack, a couple thousand. And God knows if it's Rex Viper, it's going to get 20 or 30,000 fucking views. So, but
or if it's
yeah,
just about Bimmy.
yeah, just Bimmy in general brings in the views. And a lot of people like to criticize like Red Cow and me for like, oh man, imagine making a whole channel like dick riding someone to get subscribers. And it's like, yeah, kind of like how James Rolfe like spent his whole career making fun of someone else's video games and getting subscribers from that. And then eventually they learned to love the character, and they followed James to all the other shit he ended up doing on his channel, like the movies and the board James and it's bullshit and
Mhm.
all that. It's like, yeah, you got to start somewhere. What about bands who make their whole career from a cover song? Like they covered a song that people already liked and that got their foot in the door. And then, oh, wait, guess what? I also like these other songs like fucking, was it Quiet Riot? Like they
Mhm.
got their foot in the door with Come On Feel the Noise, which was a cover. And their version, I think, is better. But, it's like, it's not that weird of a anomaly to
And
like,
that album was huge.
yeah,
Like, it wasn't just that song on that album, Metal Health, that was a hit.
it
It
was the
was like,
first heavy metal album to hit number one, period.
yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it's so like whenever I talk about like Rex Viper or James Rolfe or whatever, Yeah, that's what pretty much anyone who's successful, they got successful because they talked about something that people were interested in, something that was popular
Yeah.
or whatever the
All of
fuck.
the popular film critics on YouTube, they're successful because they talk about movies. Like that's their whole thing. Like they talk about other people's work.
Like the people who are able to become popular from 100% solely original thing, that is so fucking rare. Like
Yeah.
you have to have
I
such a
mean, we got
unique.
people who are becoming popular and their channels are doing better than both of our channels because they just do reaction videos.
Well, either that, dude. I saw this channel recently, and they started their channel in June or July of 2023. All they
Mhm.
cover is the channel's called Podcast Cringe. I'm actually subscribed to it because I like tea. Um,
Yeah.
and all he does is talk about like awkward or cringy moments on like he does like the same 4 or 5 like Joe Rogan,
Yeah.
Logan Paul's podcast, Burt Kreischer, Tom Segura.
Uh-huh.
Like he'll just talk about like drama or dramatic moments that happen on these podcasts. He's already at 15,000 fucking subscribers, dude. His channel's not even 6 months old.
Yeah. It's people
Like
love the
my
drama too.
channel's
That's the
been
other
around
thing.
since 2015.
My channel's been around longer than that.
Yeah, and I just hit 10,000. I just hit 10,000 subscribers, and my shit's been around for what? Fucking like almost like 8 or 9 fucking years. You know,
It is
and
what it is.
it pisses me off, dude, when I think about it. The hungry skeleton really hit a nerve. All right,
So
uh, Pineapple Moon. I like the real Jeepers Creepers
they don't
story.
reference that case at all in the
What are they talking
special.
about there, Mike? Enlighten us.
Dennis Depew.
Oh, okay. That movie was based off of that case.
Yeah, loosely based on that case for
Oh,
sure.
that's interesting.
Because there's a scene in that film that is very reminiscent of the reenactment or actually what happened where they drive by and see a murder taken or see a body being taken out of the back of a car and then they get
Interesting.
chased. Um,
All right, thanks, Gara.
I think I understand why though they didn't mention it. It's because Victor Salva is a scumbag, so I think they probably didn't want to associate themselves with Victor Salva and anything that he did. So
Well,
that's probably why they didn't mention it.
they clearly weren't really, aside from the wigs of Instagram, they weren't really
Yeah.
big on talking about anything that is
They
unsolved
talked
mysteries
briefly
adjacent.
about SNL
Oh,
near the
right. Yeah.
end.
Yeah. They showed some clips of kind of the cultural impact, the cultural relevance
Yeah.
of Unsolved, the legacy, I guess, if you want to put it that way.
And like
That
a
the-
clip of somebody on a sitcom referencing Unsolved Mysteries. I think it
yeah,
was Big Bang Theory.
it was Big Bang Theory. But I mean, like, I don't know. Would it have killed them to mention the fact that there's like fan podcasts and YouTube videos? Maybe.
I think you know why they didn't mention no podcasts.
You know,
Terry was probably like when somebody brought up like, why don't we talk about like the fans a little bit? Like, why don't we maybe mention some of these
no.
podcasts?
We try to sue the fans. We don't want to bring them into this. Yeah, man. I mean, you guys may already know about this, but if you don't, when we first started our podcast back in fucking 2016, Mike had made this art, this cover art for the
Based on
podcast.
that t-shirt logo, by the way.
Yeah. And so it was literally, he didn't really create anything. He just
No, I didn't create anything.
He just slapped the word
I'm gonna be honest.
uncovering above this logo. So it was uncovering unsolved mysteries. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever. Let's use that. And then we started a Patreon for our podcast. And so we started making money. It wasn't a lot. It was like $50 a month or something like that from our
barely anything
from our patrons or whatever. It got bigger as time went, as we peaked.
Yeah.
And then it got less again as we went down the downward spiral. Too much chit chat, probably. I would venture to say. So I, at the same time, am just being super proactive in my life at that point for whatever reason. And I'm like I sent a letter to Don Devereaux. He was on one of the episodes of Unsolved Mysteries, dealing with the murder of Danny Castellero, who was this reporter who is about to uncover all this like government secrecy and government cover-ups of the 1980s. And he was working on these materials, and then they find him with his wrist slit in a bathtub hotel. And Don Devereaux was kind of getting information on the case. He was going to, I guess, report on the case, and then his life started getting threatened. Clearly, it was some kind of governmental interference, basically like stay, keep your nose out of this shit. Because Danny was looking into essentially like government agents kind of illicitly purchasing gold bullion from like somewhere in the like Southeast Asia or something like that, ill-begotten, And so you had these high level government officials, doing these acquiring this shit illegally, and the Department of Justice had actually like opened a case on it, and so I guess that's when I'm assuming the people in government high up in power were like, we need to start, fixing these problems, like we need to start cleaning some of these dirty bits, like this guy barking around our heels here about corruption and this, that, and the other. We need to take him out and make it look like an accident, So Don Devereaux essentially was getting that same treatment. Anyway, I end up writing to Don Devereaux. He had his website up or whatever. The dude in 2016 or 2017, the guy was probably in his 80s, because he was like in his 60s when he was on Unsolved Mysteries, like 25, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But so he didn't have a phone number. He obviously didn't have an Instagram or anything like that, but he did have a snail mail address to his office or whatever. So I like handwrite him a fucking letter, I think, or I typed it out. I don't remember. Probably typed it because my handwriting's horrible. He handwrites me back a letter saying that he would love to be on our podcast, and he gives me his phone number. So I call him and I interview him, and that's still up on SoundCloud if anybody wants to listen to that. If you're a big Unsolved Mysteries freak, you'd want to listen to it. But other than that, I wouldn't see anyone wanting to hear that. First of all, I was nervous as fuck, and I did an awful job interviewing him because I was like nervous to talk to him. I got a little better at talking to people who were on Unsolved Mysteries going forward, but that was the first time, and it was kind of a big deal to me because like I was very well aware of that case, and I had seen him on. You were on the TV, Mr. Wow, kind of thing. So Don was still good friends with John Cosgrove and Terry Moore, the executive producers for Unsolved Mysteries. And while I'm on the phone call with them, he's like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "I let them know about your podcast. I figured they'd be interested in knowing about it or whatever." I think he did it in the spirit of like, "Oh, isn't that cool? These two young people are talking about the show still. Let me let John and Terry know about this."
He meant well.
Yeah, I think
Don meant well.
I think he meant well. But John and Terry didn't mean well at all, because what proceeded to happen was they looked in, either they or their lawyers looked into our podcast. They listened to it first of all, and so basically what ended up happening is I get a letter from their fucking lawyer. It might be worth me grabbing the letter and reading exactly what it says. In fact, I'll do that because I don't think I ever did that on the podcast. Keep them entertained, Mike.
Yeah. I was not involved with that because I wasn't involved writing the letter. So Josh was the only one that was involved at anything legal with them, which is kind of crazy because I'm the one that technically used the logo. I thought it was going to be okay though, because the logo was the Redbubble version of the logo that wasn't the same one that was used on the show. So technically it was different, but I guess it wasn't different enough. Also, the fact that we used Unsolved Mysteries in the title was apparently an issue. So John and Terry didn't take kindly to that. So they sent Josh the cease and desist letter. And then that's why we changed the name to Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries from Uncovering Unsolved Mysteries. Which made it harder for Unsolved Mysteries fans to really find the podcast or really discover us because of the fact that the name was just so generic. But at the same time, I think the name change just opened up a whole new door of things that we could discuss and made it so it wasn't just strictly only Unsolved Mysteries material. So I think in the long run, for what we were able to do and what we were able to get out of the podcast, I think, the cease and desist letter sucked, and changing the name and dealing with all the hassle of changing everything was a pain in the ass. But I think in the long run, it was kind of for the better.
So needless to say, I wasn't able to find the letter. I mean, I didn't feel like searching for like, half an hour trying to find it. But
Yeah.
basically, and you might have already sounded like you were already talking
Yep.
about this. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. So they saw that they said we were ripping off their theme song. First of all, that's a cover. I made that in Fruity Loops
Yeah.
FL Studio. I covered that. That's a cover. That's not a direct. I know I did a really good job on recreating the song, but it's not a direct rip off of their song. It's a cover of their song.
And that's not illegal, really. You can
No,
make
it's
covers.
yeah. You covers are not. I mean, I think they thought we were making money from the podcast. We were making money from Patreon.
Yeah,
We weren't
that's a
making it.
different
I
thing.
was paying SoundCloud to host.
Yeah.
I was paying the people.
We
They were
weren't
not
selling
paying me.
merch. We weren't selling merch at
Not at the
that
time.
point. We weren't doing anything like that with the name Unsolved Mysteries. We just had a Patreon. So I think John and Terry and their lawyers were completely unaware of how the internet really worked and didn't
Yeah,
really know,
definitely.
the difference between Patreon and,
And I mean,
other
like, yes, we did use.
forms of making money.
I would insert clips from the show in there, but they weren't like super long. Which again,
No.
that borders on fair use, which is again
Mhm.
perfectly legal.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. So anyway, we got the cease and desist letter, and so I had to go in and I think we were like, geez, what 10 or 15 episodes deep when that
Yeah,
happened.
maybe more than that.
So I had to go in, I had to delete all the original episodes. I thought we would,
Mhm.
and at that point we had already accumulated, I don't know, maybe 1,000 listeners or something like that. And I thought, oh great, we're gonna lose all of our fucking listeners. Um, and we have to restart and no, people aren't gonna be there for it. But no, everybody fucking came back and we went on strong and it was kind of like, well, fuck you, I don't need to use your stupid show logo and theme song. Now we can do our own shit and we still have our audience, so yeah, take
Yeah.
that. So yeah, anyway, that was a
But
long-winded way
speaking
of me
speaking of
saying
the
what they had to do.
podcast, though, the topic at hand was the Unsolved Mystery special, and got a little distracted there. You guys get a little live taste of sometimes what happens between me and Josh on the podcast, where we
Yes,
go off on
that might
tangents.
have all been edited out if it was actually the podcast, but live without a net here. I just have to do
Yeah.
when I know I'm live, my brain turns on this extra filter that isn't there when we're not live, where I know I can just edit it. So I'm like, I'm hyper filtration mode right now with the things that I'm saying, because as Mike knows, and thankfully only Mike knows, I've said some very scandalous stuff on the podcast off the cuff, shooting from the hip, and Mike has to
Yep.
and Mike has to awkwardly laugh and be like, "Yeah, I wouldn't leave that in there if I were you. I'd cut that."
Uh-huh.
And I'm like a lot of times I'd be like, "No, fuck that. I'm leaving it in. This is my opinion, and
Uh-huh.
they can go fuck themselves." And then when after the podcast, a couple days later, when I actually would sit down to edit it, I would listen to it. I'm like, yeah, Mike's 100% right. I'm cutting that out. Yeah, that's probably not my best interest to
No.
keep that in.
No. No.
And what I'm talking about here, it's not like I went on like a Kramer style Laugh Factory rant.
No.
It's nothing like that.
No.
But
No.
yeah,
No,
anyway.
it's just some opinions that some people might consider to be politically incorrect,
Some hot
just to
takes.
some hot takes. But yeah, they talked about the show and how they got tips from viewers in the special. They mentioned something I thought was really interesting about how they found the cases, where they would hire this company that probably doesn't even exist anymore because nobody
Probably
is
obsolete.
gonna ask somebody to clip out newspaper articles and send them directly to a studio. But that's what they did. They hired these outside people who would just look through local newspapers and just cut the headlines out that they thought were interesting or could be useful for the show, and then would just send them directly to Unsolved Mysteries, and they would look through them and figure it out. They also got a lot of cases directly from the people who were involved in the cases. They sent them letters asking
Yeah,
Unsolved Mysteries to cover a missing persons case or an unexplained death or some
yeah.
of these
One
other
town had said
cases.
like a 6,000 signature petition for
Yeah.
Unsolved Mysteries to cover the case, and they did cover it, and it got solved.
Hmm.
One thing that I found interesting that I didn't realize, and I guess there's really no way to realize it unless you, I don't know, maybe unless they printed it in TV Guide at the time or something. Every single one of those segments had like its own nickname. Like, so on my DVD box set, so the Cindy James story is called "Scared to Death,"
Hmm.
and the one with Leonard Rizzo is called "Backyard Bones."
Yeah.
So they have these nicknames. I thought they only came up with those cute little nicknames for the box set,
Yeah,
but
that's what I thought too.
come to find out, every single segment has had its own nickname because I think I wrote it down on here. Yeah, so like the one with the jet ski jumping over the boat was called Madman Across the Water, which
Hmm.
is the name of an Elton John album. So I guess that's where they got that from. And then another segment that they showed was called Taunting Robber. And so, like, for instance, on the VHS rips that we got legally, totally legally, um, it's just the names of the people. So that's how I thought they labeled the show was like, oh, this segment's Danny Caslero, this segment's Cindy James. But no, they have little cutesy nicknames for every single one of those segments, which now I'd be interested in learning like what they called. Like, I wish I had a full list of every single
Yeah.
one of the nicknames of the segments because I thought that was interesting. Like,
Yeah,
what?
that was a little intriguing for sure. They talk about the casting. We mentioned the casting earlier, but they go pretty in depth on that. And that's honestly my favorite part of this special is when you have people who are involved with the show and they're discussing the various different things that happened with the casting for a segment. There's a pretty funny story. They were talking about they were doing an audition for a segment that featured some robbers, some guys who would like rob somebody, and they did the audition, and there was this group of African American guys, and they came in and they were just so believable and just so professional in the audition that the Unsolved Mysteries producers, like the casting directors, like they were pretty impressed, and so they asked them afterwards. It's like, "Well, how did you guys know how to do this so well?" And then they're like, "Oh, we're robbers."
Yeah, we're actual robbers.
Yeah,
So
and then
this
they're
is.
like, "You've got the part. It's good."
I thought that was weird that they hired them after they
Yeah,
admitted to a crime.
I know.
Like, okay, you all right? You're gonna hire them? They just admitted that
They
they.
probably didn't want, like, think about it. Like, if somebody admits that they're a criminal and they're cool with it and, like, they're not being disagreeable, do you wanna piss them off in that
I
situation?
mean,
I'd be like, "You got the part. It's all good.
there's a reason why you
Water
have
under the
security guards. I
bridge."
guess I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. And then they talk about some of the actors that went to go on to become bigger from being on the show. They had some Asian guy on there. I don't know who that guy was. I didn't recognize him. But
Oh,
then
he's been in some newer stuff.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. But then they show Cheryl Hines, which I know
mhm,
as Cheryl David from all the seasons that she was on Curb Your Enthusiasm in,
mhm.
which I thought she was great on that show. Um, she pretty much plays the same character like in
Yeah.
anything I've ever seen her in.
The
And then,
big one's Matthew McConaughey.
yeah, Matthew McConaughey and his shirtless lawnmower scene. Um, and they kind of like dissed his acting a
Yeah, and
bit.
I don't think he was that
I was
bad.
like,
I thought he
I was
did a
like,
good
dude,
job.
out of all the actors you guys have had on this show, like he was not anywhere near like bad at all. Like,
No.
I mean, I honestly, it's hard for me to fucking watch that particular segment. The fucking I forget the cutesy name they gave it, the Texas Killers, whatever the fuck.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, Matthew McConaughey is from Texas, so they were in Texas, and he was a local actor, and he needed a gig, and they hired him probably because of his glistening abs. Um,
And speaking of that, the whole shirtless thing was something that was done on the fly because it was just so hot. And I think either McConaughey or I think he might have asked, like, "Can I do this scene shirtless?" And they're like, "Sure."
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, they talked about how he shouted out Unsolved Mysteries as his like first acting gig
Mhm.
or whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, well anyone involved with the show or who's obsessed with the show as we are already knows that. That's nothing new.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. The story though about the guy that said he knew how to ride a horse,
oh yeah, and he very
that
much
was
did not.
hilarious. Because they talked about this guy who they hired for this reenactment, and I remember that case. We covered it on the podcast. It's the one.
Wasn't it on the first episode of the Film Rise
Yeah, it
ones?
might have been. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
And so we covered that case, and I don't remember if we talked about that particular part of the reenactment or not.
I to me, it was something that I wouldn't have noticed unless it was
Yeah,
pointed out to me. And then
yeah.
once they pointed it out, I was like, "Oh yeah, that he looks terrified."
So what happened is this guy, because he wanted to be on Unsolved Mysteries, he wanted to be on TV.
They're
The
like, "Can
Unsolved
you ride a
Mysteries
horse?"
casting
"Yeah, I can ride a
directors,
horse."
yeah,
Yeah.
they asked him if he could ride a horse, and he was nowhere near as proficient as he said he was. Because they showed the clip, and the horse is just barreling
Uh-huh.
at full speed.
That dude does not look comfortable doing what he's doing in that
He's just
moment.
holding on for dear life. It's honestly kind of a miracle that it didn't go horribly awry. And they then mentioned that he didn't do anything with horses for the rest of the shoot.
Yeah.
And speaking of miracles, they talk about the church explosion that they did for that segment where it was a miracle where this church blew up and nobody got hurt.
And
Uh,
the producer used way too much dynamite or whatever it was to
yeah,
blow the
yeah,
church
the
up.
explosive expert. Yeah, they used too much dynamite, and apparently it like broke windows like miles down the road.
It
And
shot off fucking shrapnel, wooden
yeah,
shrapnel at the producer or director,
yeah,
whatever, almost hit
yeah,
him. Yeah, I mean, that was an epic ass explosion. That was back when the show had
oh
a
yeah,
budget to do shit like that.
yeah. They
Um,
also talk about they have interviews with various different directors who did certain segments. There, one of the directors he did Roswell, and he talks about how that was his favorite segment that he did for the
it's
show
one of my
because
favorites
it's
as well.
very cinematic. It was like making a movie because he had like the UFO model and
And the
then the
fake looking
aliens.
aliens
Yeah.
that look fake as fuck, that look like they're made out of styrofoam. Yeah. But I still like it though. Still one of
Yeah.
my favorite segments, even though it's like, everybody, well, I don't know how many like young people like Gen Z, I don't know how much they know about Area 51 and Roswell, but aliens were really big in the 90s. So like
Well, you
everybody,
remember the Area 51 meme? Remember that?
oh, the Naruto thing.
Yeah.
That shit was so stupid. It's just a perfect example of like how the internet can just be incredibly cringe sometimes.
Well, it still is. I mean, look at the trends now with the NPC streams and all that.
I still haven't seen one of those things. I'm not just exactly sure what it is, but it sounds very uncanny valley. It sounds freakish to me. All right, let's
But
see here. Yeah, just shouting out some of the comments here.
mhm.
Hell yeah, what's up, dude? How are you? I'm slightly hungover, which is no different than if we were doing the actual podcast where I would be
Uh-huh.
saying the same exact thing. Raphael, hey, I know you've been looking, man. Raphael hits me up in my DMs every now and then. He's like, got a new podcast for me? Where's the new podcast? So I know he must be enjoying this right now. Norberto said some more stuff. Pineapple Moon said you should review Howling 4. Yeah, Mike should review the Howling 4 movie. I don't
God,
really.
that movie sucks ass.
Uh,
Howling 4, the original Nightmare. Not as bad as Howling 7, New Moon Rising, though. That film is one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
how many fucking Howlings are there?
There's 7. There's the reboot with Lindsay Shaw, I think is her name, from Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, and it's like a Twilight ripoff. It's
Jesus
called The
Christ.
Howling Reborn, and I think that's it. I think there's only 8.
There's only 8. Roy Smith says, dude, I'm watching. Good, Roy. I'm glad you're watching. Thank you. Appreciate it. I wish more people were watching, quite frankly, but I'm happy. I'm happy with the 10 or 11 people we have.
Happy with any audience at this point, right?
Yeah, pretty much. At some point in the documentary, one of the producers is like, yeah, whenever I'd wear my Unsolved Mysteries jacket in the airport, someone would stop me, and I'm like, hold the phone. You have an Unsolved Mysteries jacket
Uh-huh.
from the
Uh-huh.
actual people? It's official.
Yeah.
I want that
A
fucking
crew
jacket.
jacket, yeah.
Yeah, that would be fucking dope.
I think it was I don't know if it was corduroy or not, because I know there was their official crew hats were corduroy, and they really didn't look that great. Like, if the jacket was corduroy too, that would kinda be lame.
No,
It
it
would be
wasn't.
still kinda cool, but it's Unsolved Mysteries, but it's corduroy.
It was the '90s, so it wouldn't surprise me if it was some.
Would be better if it was a starter jacket.
Yeah, well,
Unsolved Mystery starter
you would
jacket.
think that would be the logical conclusion now, but the
It
garish
was
fashion of the '90s
It
knows
was
no
probably
bounds.
a leather jacket, is my guess, for some of the more esteemed crew members.
So this is another thing about the special that kind of blew my fucking brain right out of my head. They
Mhm.
brought up the music, but they never shouted
They
out
didn't.
Gary
No,
Malkin.
no.
Didn't have him in. I was like, all right, they're about to show Gary Malkin and have him talk about his music. Nope, no mention of the
That was a
guy.
huge missed opportunity.
Oh,
Like,
totally.
I was really surprised by how badly they dropped the ball on that one. I mean, they didn't even mention Gary for one, which was lame.
They credited
And
him at the
then
end in the end credits,
yeah,
but they don't mention him on the fucking
even
special.
when they talked about the music, they didn't even show like the original intro. They even like play the original like score. They played
Right.
the other score that was used for Lifetime.
Yeah, it's just
And of
like
course they talked about people saying that, "Oh, that score still scares me after all this time."
they're talking about how the music is basically like almost just as important an element in the show as anything else, and yet you're
And it
not,
is.
and yet you're not going to have the guy who like made the music, the music
Maybe he
on
wasn't
it.
available at the time, possibly when they were doing the shoot. Like, I would like to know what the thought process
I
is
know he's
behind
still
that.
alive because
Yeah.
Ryan, the guy from Grave Face Records, the company that released all the Unsolved Mysteries LPs, the records and the CDs, he had to be in contact with Gary to get the DAT tapes, the
Yeah.
garbage bags full of DAT tapes that had all these music cues on them still. So I know he's still around. And that's another thing. I mean, again, this wasn't a very fan inclusive special because they could have gone on about how the soundtrack's been preserved on record now
Mhm.
by younger fans of the show who are
Yeah.
now in a position to like own a printing factory for records, and how the
Mhm.
legacy, and that could have been put into the legacy part of the show, the legacy of the
Yeah.
podcast, the soundtracks that people are putting out, with the, in tandem with Unsolved Mysteries to make it official to where it's not just some bootleg quality thing. They could have talked about, they already mentioned the references in pop culture. I mean, basically, I guess like John and Terry are such old school media people that, like, unless you're on the television, then you're not legitimate in their eyes.
That's what, other than the Instagram page, which that might have
Yeah,
been just brought up to them
I think that
by
was just like
an intern.
Yeah, like that was just like a little quirky,
Yeah.
whatever. I was surprised that they would put up, the only thing they would put up by fans is something that like is slightly disparaging to them. Like look how ridiculous their costuming was,
Yeah.
That doesn't seem very Tom and Jerry like.
Tom and Jerry. There was a good chunk of the special that was just talking about random segments, which I understand that. Like, oh, creepy segments or whatever, or whatever the heck that portion was, or they briefly talked about like the creepy element of the show, and they focused way too much on the arson segment with Omar.
Look at it, Omar. Look at it. I told you I'd do it. Hear the wolves, their cries into the night. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the sound of a virgin. Anytime they bring up the random segments, I'm like, of course. Yep, I know this one. We covered almost all these segments, bitch. You're not going to surprise me with anything. Like every segment they brought up, it was like, yeah. And then remember
they talked about Teresita Bassa.
Yeah,
and that is a good segment, by the way.
No, it is. They around the bad acting portion, they didn't specifically say it, but around the really bad acting portion, they show a few clips of Storm in Hell.
Yeah.
And I loved that they did that, because that was some of the worst acting I think on the entire show.
You're a piece of garbage.
You're a piece of garbage, Howard. Yeah, so I appreciated that. I felt like most of the cases that they brought up were like...
I'm surprised they didn't talk about visual effects or anything, because that would have been interesting to hear. Like they were using CGI and other stuff like that. They didn't mention any of that, how they did like the ghost effects or any of those sort of things. That's the kind of stuff that really intrigues me, because I'm a huge special effects geek. So like that stuff always fascinates me, and they didn't even mention that at all.
I think probably because they were bad effects. They were good at the time. For the time, they were fine, but like looking back now, they look corny as hell. I mean, I can get past it because like my love for the show blinds me to the poor.
I think some of the ghost effects for the time still look fine compared to the CGI UFOs, like.
Yeah, some of those CGI UFOs. But they got the job done when I was a kid. It still scared me as a kid,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, a good story is a good story. So if it has some shitty effects, but you got Stack narrating it, you got the music, it still was effective. Even in fact, the Manhattan UFO one where it showed the father and son outside their yard looking up at this massive, CGI. I thought that was genuinely creepy as a kid, and I still think it's pretty creepy I mean, think about it. Like you step outside, you look up into the sky, and you just see what looks like something from Star Wars.
Yeah. It's like the Independence Day scene, where they walk outside and then you see the giant Independence Day,
bigger than
the
any
giant alien ship outside.
Bigger than any plane we have. Nothing that we have is anywhere near that size that's in the air, and not shaped aerodynamically at all, basically defying the laws of physics. And it's huge. Yeah, I mean, the father was talking about how he was speechless and how he contemplated his whole life and shit. Like his life flashed before his eyes when he sees this thing, because it's like,
it makes sense.
At that point, you kind of have to question everything you've ever known or been taught or whatever. Like, that shouldn't be up there. That shouldn't exist. What is that? Why am I seeing this? This is very upsetting to me.
Yeah.
I think that's why anything that breaks like the norms of and this some psychology, I think it was
Well,
William Roll who was
yeah.
saying that anytime something breaks our understanding of the world, it's very upsetting to us usually. That's why the old guy in the uh was it the Tallman? No, it was the were the two old people, the husband and wife, and the bell would ring, and the old
Oh yeah. Okay. I don't remember the name of that, but yeah, the one that was on the Halloween special where Robert Stack was outside the Queen Mary.
yeah, so like that guy, like halfway into telling his story about the bell, like he got choked up, like he was, it was hard for him to even talk about it because it's like your whole life you have this grasp of everything having rules and physics,
Yeah.
and doors don't just shut on their own with like a lot of force, unless you close it
Mhm.
or a gust of wind comes through. There's your brain, our brains hate chaos and abstraction. We love order and for things to make
Mhm.
sense. So for that old man to put the bell in a room that his wife wasn't even in, and then he hears the bell
Yeah.
ring. It's just, it breaks your mind because it's like,
Yeah.
how is this possible unless
But
there really is this
yeah,
other life, this
I think
underworld or whatever.
what's crazy is that's kind of a generational thing because like a lot of people now, like when the UFO stuff came out, when the footage from the military, the Navy, Air Force, like all of that started leaking, like people were still like, oh, that's fake, or that's not real, or whatever. That like when that happened. Remember when that first happened, where
Yeah,
the
yeah,
footage was released to the public? Like, if that happened back then, it would be like a lot of people would be freaking out about it. And there would be all these
yeah.
specials on TV and people would be discussing it. There'd be newspaper articles out the ass. There would be magazines talking about it.
Yeah, Mike's bringing up the gimbal footage,
Yeah.
and there were some other ones that the actual Air Force released that shows these unidentified flying objects, or UAPs, or what they're
Hmm.
calling them, because God knows they can't take the colloquialism that we've all come to be familiar with. No, they have to make their own fancy government one. But they're showing these unidentified flying objects in the sky, like on radar, defying what was thought to be possible as far as physics are concerned. The rate of ascent and descent and
Hmm.
moving to the left, moving to the right was so fast that like it would have killed a human being.
Hmm.
Our bodies are not meant to withstand those amount of G forces. Um, and it was seemingly intelligent movements. It wasn't like some random, I don't know what, bird or
Yeah.
satellite or something like that. It was some kind of a vehicle. So that this footage was released by the government, and it was covered on like Yahoo News and like all these other news outlets. And yeah, there was just a general meh, like when it came out. And yeah, if that had come out in the fucking 90s, especially during like UFO Fever, during X Files being one of like, the highest rated shows and all that shit, yeah, people would have been shitting bricks. But I also think it kind of comes down to like, especially with Americans, like we're very like show don't tell, like we're very visual people. Like if there had been like a high definition image of an actual, that you could discern is an actual UFO, not just this blip on a radar, and they had high def footage of the thing flying around
Well, I
and
mean,
shit.
it wasn't just a blip. Like there was more to it. But
Well, whatever, you know what I mean.
yeah.
If it was an actual fucking, high def craft, like
Well,
in
here's the
this.
thing. Like if it's moving that fast, you're not gonna get a good image of
Yeah, but
it.
I guess my point is that like until people like see it themselves with this generation,
Yeah.
I think
I
they.
think I think with a lot of people though, even if like a UFO landed in the middle of Times Square, they would still be, oh, that's fake. That's a
Well,
publicity stunt.
now, yes. Well, and you can't really blame
Yeah.
the skeptical people these days because of deep fakes and
Mhm.
Photoshop and just,
And the AI stuff.
AI. Yeah, nowadays, like, you got to be more skeptical than ever because you can fake just about
You might
anything.
get to the point where they'll bring Robert Stack back from the dead and have new episodes of
Yeah,
Unsolved
yeah,
Mysteries.
quite fucking possible. They put his face on someone else's body.
Yeah.
They use his AI voice. They generate his voice with AI because AI is
Uh-huh.
getting better with the voice. Even
Yeah.
um, like they did this shit at
You know what? If they think that's okay, if Stack's estate thinks that's acceptable, like I'd watch it. I mean,
yeah, I would too. Did they ever do an episode on the Patterson Bigfoot film? Is that the legendary
they
footage of him?
briefly they talked about Bigfoot, and speaking of Bigfoot, that's another thing that I thought was pretty fun.
Oh, right,
The
yeah, there's
story that they talked about on the special, where I didn't know this, but they rented the Harry and the Hendersons Bigfoot costume suit that Kevin Peter Hall wore, that was designed by Rick Baker,
dude, I
who I
fucking
actually saw in person and saw he brought over the head of Harry, and even like I think he moved it around a little bit with like the I don't remember what exactly the term is, but a lot of these animatronics have these controls that you like press a button, and it's not really it's sometimes it's remote controlled, but it's a little more complicated than that because a
yeah,
lot of it's
I
very
fucking loved
puppet
that movie growing up.
related. And yeah, you're a big
No,
fan of that one.
yeah, I really, and also fun fact, that movie was the first time I ever heard the word shit. When Harry
Yeah,
runs in front of the car and what's his name, the
John
actor
Lithgow.
John Lithgow walks up to it, and the son walks out, and he goes, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
Now for I guess because he said it in a little kid voice, and I was a little kid, and it sounded to me like well, he was chided by his father in the movie, so I knew that it was something that you shouldn't say, but it had such a unique sound to the word. Like, I knew holy, obviously, but shit, I was like, that sounds like a cuss word. Like, I didn't know for a fact that it was, but it just sounded like a cuss word to me because it was so short and kind of had a cut to it, you
Uh-huh.
know? So it was on like the school bus when my mom drove a school bus. I was like asking, is this a cuss word? She's like, no. Is this a cuss word? I don't remember what examples I had. She's like, no. I was like, is holy shit a cuss word? She goes, oh, Joshua. Where did you hear that? I was like, I heard it with Harry and the Halbrusens. Uh, and she's like, never say that word. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Shit, mom, sorry. Now I say it all
Now
the
you say
time.
that word a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I fucking do. But
um,
anyway,
but yeah, I saw that in the theater, and Rick Baker was there. It was fun to hear him. He really likes that. That's actually his favorite film that he's worked on. Um,
what did you think of it,
and
Mike? You better have loved it.
I didn't love it, but I did enjoy it. I liked it. I have a review of it on my channel.
Oh, do you?
Um, there was a TV show too,
Oh
a spinoff
no.
TV show
That's
called on USA where they kind of tried to do Alf, but with Harry.
that no. I mean, I shouldn't say
Yeah,
that
it was a
never.
sitcom. It was a Harry and the Hendersons sitcom
I won't
that
say that.
lasted for like 3 seasons or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I won't say that never works, but it usually doesn't work. Especially if it's like a movie adaptation. I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but I just feel like those are always bad ideas.
But anyway, going back to Unsolved Mysteries, like yeah, they rented the Harry and the Henderson suit and they used it for the Bigfoot segment. And apparently because they shot the segment in this I think it was like some small town somewhere, like what they do a lot of the time. And there was this bar that was there locally, and they were shooting footage where they would have the Bigfoot walk down the street, and apparently there were still people in the bar. So it became this kind of crazy scenario where people would walk out of the bar and see a Bigfoot and then like just freak out. And I think they tried to attack the Bigfoot actor at one point.
Yeah. They were talking about how like sometimes they would like whenever they're profiling like people who are wanted, sometimes they would cast actors who looked, I guess, so similar to.
Oh yeah, that was great
Which
too.
after watching the show for as long as I have, I don't remember any particular segment that stands out where they
Well, I
use this
think there are
actor.
some. There are some for sure, but there's a lot of them where, yeah, they
Well,
don't look like them at all.
anyway, apparently every now and then they would cast an actor who looked so much like the actual perpetrator that people would call the cops. So Unsolved Mysteries had to make these cards that would say, "Hey, I'm an actor. I was on Unsolved Mysteries portraying this character." And I'm assuming it had some kind of a phone number that you could
Yeah.
call or whatever to corroborate the
I'm just
actor's voice.
imagining that being that actor and then someone, being like looking at him and then, calling the
Don't
police and
arrest
the
me.
police
I'm
show
an actor. I'm an actor.
the
Yeah, sure you are. That's what they all say.
the police show up to the door. And this has happened more than once, so then the actor has to pull up the card that has unsolved mysteries on it. And it's like, I'm an actor for unsolved mysteries. And
Yeah,
then they're like, "Oh, okay. Sorry." It's like, "That's the 5th time this week."
yeah. That was It's like I guess the show was a little bit more beefy, or the special was more beefier than I thought because I keep remembering things from the
Yeah.
special where I'm like, oh yeah, that was pretty interesting.
It's thin compared to other documentaries on, a popular IP, that's for sure, but and I do feel there's other things that could have talked about a little bit more, like the experience of working in a call center, for instance.
Oh
That
yeah, they
that's a
brought the call
different sort
center.
of thing. They didn't really mention the call center that much in depth in terms of what it was like, what kind of calls they got, how they, handled things. I'm pretty sure they got tons of calls, and I'm pretty sure they might have even got prank called, and that would have been
Oh
kind of fun to hear
yeah, I
their
don't know if I would.
stories about getting prank called.
I don't know if I so much would have cared about that aspect of it. So that didn't really bother me that they didn't go into that. But yeah, the Keely Shea Smith stuff and like her inclusion. I feel like I already know the answer to that. I feel like they wouldn't even have to talk about
Yeah,
that. Like I feel like they
yeah,
they added her to balance out the lack of a female element on the show, I guess, because literally there's no reason why Robert Stack had to throw it to Keely Shea Smith for more. There was no purpose for that. He could have just done the update himself.
uh-huh.
I guess it
Ratings were kind of starting to slide a little bit, so I don't think it was necessarily just for like more of a female presence. I think it was also like, oh, ratings are sliding a little. Let's try something a little different.
they
And
did
then when
the
it went to a different network, then you had Virginia Madsen, who was actually an actress in Hollywood. She was in Candyman.
what was the Brady Bunch episode, or no, what was it, yeah,
Brady
the
Bunch
the Brady
episode.
Bunch episode where they bring in like the cousin because ratings were not doing so well.
Oh yeah, cousin Oliver. Yeah.
Yeah, cousin Oliver. Is that what Keely Shea Smith
Well,
was?
I think I would say that was Virginia Madsen more than Shea Smith.
I don't even remember what Virginia Madsen looked like. I'm gonna have to look her up because I'm not. That name is. I mean, the name's ringing a bell, but
Yeah,
I
she
don't
was in
remember what she looked.
Candyman. Um, that was really honestly her most famous role. Really, if you think about it, is probably Candyman. And yeah, she was there with Robert Stack, and she hosted some segments when I think it was CBS. It moved to CBS,
Yeah,
if I remember
I'm looking.
correctly.
I'm looking right now. Yeah, you could tell Robert Stack was definitely older in this one. Yeah, I'm not recognizing her at all. I don't know if I've ever seen a segment with.
Have you not seen Candyman?
No. Is that a surprise to you,
Okay.
Mike?
I mean, not really, but
So
I think you might like that one. It's a atmospheric
I know the concept of
horror
it. It's
film.
like if you say Candyman or something, then this.
It's like an urban. It deals with urban legends and stuff like that, and it's a well written film.
So me and Mike have this thing on the podcast we used to do where like I have And I've actually come to a resolution here, because the old narrative was Josh hasn't seen any movies. Like, just any movie that Mike would bring up, I've never seen it. Oh, it's just like in this such and such movie that literally is a classic that everyone has seen. Nope, I haven't
Uh-huh.
seen it. I've come to realize that I've seen a lot of movies. I've just seen more like avant-garde shit and
Mm.
stuff that's on the fringes. And Mike's more of I guess I wouldn't say mainstream, because you definitely cover movies that aren't mainstream, but you're definitely more in line with like the classic, the stuff
Mhm.
that people have deemed as classics, even if it's so bad it's good, or classic horror franchise, or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
more your lane. My lane is like indie movie slash
Mhm.
like drama kind of genre. The drama genre is
Mhm.
very big with me. So I've seen a lot of movies that Mike hasn't seen.
Yeah.
But Mike is in the majority, in the sense of like he's seen the movies that most everyone else has also seen, and I haven't. Like, I've never seen like Rocky Horror Picture Show, for instance, and or The Princess
Well, I've seen
Bride,
that more
or
than once.
yeah, just a lot of classics I haven't seen. I've never seen like The Goonies, or fucking
Okay.
a lot of the '80s ones I haven't seen.
Uh-huh.
I did go back later in life and watch a lot of them, because I realized, like, holy shit, I can't believe I've never seen like I don't know, like
Beetlejuice.
Terminator. No, I haven't seen Beetlejuice. Um, Yeah, I don't know. Fuck, I was gonna say something that was good, and then I lost my train of thought about having to do with movies. Oh yeah, you remember when Doug Walker on Channel Awesome, he had that series called Tamara Has Never Seen, and then it was
Yes, that fu I that I honestly unsubscribed from that channel for a long time. Or actually, I'm still unsubscribed, and I stopped following that channel because of those videos. Like, those videos were just
first of
awful,
all,
and I hated it.
there's no way that you have never seen fucking Titanic, the movies that she had supposedly.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, the movie she'd supposedly never seen. I'm like, give me a fucking break. How are you gonna be an actress on this?
What that was is taking advantage of the algorithm at the time, because there was a lot of videos, and there still are, where you have these reaction videos. They're not even really reviews. They used a shit ton of footage, and they get away with it. I can't use anything because otherwise it'll just get copyrighted immediately, and I lose monetization. But these people, they do these reaction videos with pretty much the entire movie in it, and then they have, like, in the title, like, oh, watching American Werewolf in London for the first time, that kind of thing,
Yeah,
or watching RoboCop for the first time ever, and then they get like hundreds of thousands of views.
like the
I'm
first
like,
few.
who is watching these videos of people just sitting there watching a movie? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah,
I don't understand the popularity of these videos.
I think I saw like two of those Fine Brothers videos back in the day, like kids react to or whatever.
Mhm.
I've seen maybe two in my whole life, just to get a concept of like, okay, what is this? Oh, all right. They're like, wow, look at this arcane piece of technology. I can't believe people used to use these, or whatever. And that was it for me with React. I could give two fucks less about what. I don't care. It's got to be some big celebrity that I really like
What if
respect.
Tom DeLonge decided to do a reaction video channel?
So Justin Hawkins, the lead singer from The Darkness, who did that song,
Uh-huh.
"I Believe in a Thing Called Love," just listen
Yeah.
to the rhythm of my heart. So he has a YouTube channel now, and it's
Uh-huh.
gotten kind of popular. Um, I guess his band The Darkness really isn't doing shit anymore, but he does a lot of reaction videos, and man, he clickbaits the fuck out of his thumbnails
Mhm.
and his videos, because he always titles the video something like, "I can't believe they put this song on the radio," and he's just like this in the
Mhm.
thumbnail. And then he'll be like, "I can't believe they put this song on the radio, because the radio doesn't deserve a song this good." And
Yeah.
like, he always has some positive spin on it, and he clickbaits the hell out of people. And I think that's so cheesy. So I watched like 2 of his videos, and I'm like, I can't watch this. Like,
I know Jack Black. Speaking of celebrities, he's on YouTube, I think now.
yeah,
Jack Black.
Jablinski Gaming or whatever the fuck it's
Uh-huh.
called. Like, the thing is like Justin Hawkins probably still considers himself in the industry, so he can't be saying anything that's gonna burn any kind of bridge. It's like I heard somewhere it was like Patrice O'Neill was talking about like Dane Cook on Opie and
Mhm.
Anthony one time, and they Patrice said something that I thought was interesting. He's like, Dane Cook ain't gonna tell you what really happened. He's still doing stand up. Dane Cook's gonna wait to the end of his career. That's when you're gonna get the book that tells what really happened. And I think that's the case with a lot of these people. Is they're like, I still have somewhat of a career in this business. Like, I'm not gonna say anything disparaging. But that's the great thing about unknown YouTubers like you and me. We're not in any kind of fucking business, so we can say whatever the fuck we want. And I mean, I could potentially be burning bridges in the music industry that I'm not in yet. But I'm not in it, so I don't really care because they're not beating down my doors. So I'm gonna say what I want to say, and get views, bitch. So anyway, Pineapple Moon. I would like to know this myself. Mike, are you a fan of Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel?
So I would say not as a massive of a fan of them as you are, but I do like their music. I do think they're good, accomplished musicians.
Can you
They're not.
name a Peter Gabriel song besides Sledgehammer?
Oh God.
Oh man, you suck.
I know. It just put me on the spot, so I'd have to look something up. Um, but yeah,
Okay,
it's one of those things
let's
that
let's shift over to Phil Collins, more mainstream guy. You're a mainstream guy. Can you name a Phil Collins song? Oh, this would be too easy. Besides "In the Air Tonight" or "Against All Odds."
Invisible Touch.
That's Genesis.
Well, still technically
Nope,
Phil Collins.
nope. Tony Banks wrote that song. Phil Collins just
All
wrote lyrics.
right.
I'm a stickler over here, man.
um, God damn. I know he did music for Tarzan, but I don't remember any of those
See, that's
songs.
what all the kids of your age and Gen Z, they all go to fucking Tarzan, and that pisses me off. He did so much good. He had so much hot fire in the 80s, and yet fucking "You'll Be in My Heart" is the only thing people want to remember. Man, you had bangers such as "I Don't Care Anymore." Do you know?
Yes,
Do
I
you
like that
care?
song. I just couldn't
Fucking
remember it off the top of my
"Another Day in
head.
Paradise." Uh, what? What's that duet that he did with Sting? Um, "A Long, Long Way to Go," "Take Me Home,"
Mhm.
"Studio."
Yeah.
Dude,
The Studio was the other one I was thinking of, but I
he
just
was spitting that hot fire in the 80s, and then in the 90s, I
Mhm.
don't know what the fuck happened, but he fell hard. Like, he used up all of his. Phil Collins was a man built for the 1980s. All the sounds that he tended to
Yeah.
like those soft synthesizer pads and the drum machines. Man, the 80s was like meant for Phil Collins. And then when the 90s hit and like grunge came in and hip hop and shit, Phil Collins was fucked.
Phil
He
Collins
had
did a song for that was used in the end credits of Firebirds, but I don't necessarily remember the name of it, but it was a song from like I think one of his 90s albums.
Yeah, but I don't blame it with the Peter Gabriel. I'm surprised with Peter Gabriel you didn't go to "In Your Eyes," which is the song that was playing when what's his
I mean,
nuts
if I remember the name of the
pulls up the
song,
radio or
yeah,
the
Say Anything. That's
anything.
a
Yeah,
film I haven't seen all the way through. I've only seen that clip like on or just some little bits and pieces on like I
I
Love the
also
80s.
thought maybe you might go towards maybe "Shock the Monkey." That was a pretty big
I
Peter
didn't
Gabriel.
I like that song too. It's just you're the music guy.
You're the guy.
I have all this movie knowledge in my head at all times. I don't have as much music stuff in there rattling around.
So we just educated Norberto. Man, how the fuck do you say your name? Norberto on what clickbait is.
LA?
Yeah, that part's not so hard. Valle if it's Spanish. Uh,
Mhm.
anyway, whatever. I'm not going to embarrass myself anymore. Yeah, clickbait is when you basically fool people into clicking your video based on the thumbnail or the title of the thing. I use it
There were
very
all
less.
these old videos like from back in the day, like these prank channels or some of these other channels. They did
Yeah,
that so much with like some hot chick who's like barely clothed at all, and they have like some extreme clickbait title.
usually something will be circled in the video
Yeah.
on the thumbnail. Like there'll be some distant, weird looking thing that's circled, and there'll be like a question mark, like where do you see what this is? And it's true clickbait when you click on it, and the thing that's on the thumbnail isn't even in the video.
No.
That's the
No.
truest of all
That
clickbait.
happens a lot.
Yeah, that's why the Justin Hawkins videos pissed me off so bad, because he literally teased that golf ball up like he's about to really just like go in on whoever, and then he doesn't fucking that he doesn't say shit. You know, that really pisses me off. Hold on. San Jacinto is amazing Peter Gabriel song. I 100% agree. San Jacinto is an incredible Peter Gabriel song. The build on that song is orgasmic. And then when he finally comes in with I hold the line of strength that pulls me through the fear. San Jacinto. Anyway, yeah, that's an amazing. That's one of my favorite, like Rhythm of the Heat, The Family and the Fishing Net, Intruder, San Jacinto. Those are some of my favorite Peter Gabriel songs. Yeah, YouTube Shorts. Oh wait, why don't I show this comment? Yeah, YouTube Shorts are the worst. You know, I don't think that YouTube Shorts have turned out to be the golden goose that YouTube was hoping they would be,
No, they're trying to copy the Facebook and Instagram model
or TikTok.
or TikTok, and it's just not working as well. I see why people are definitely drawn to some of those things though, like on Facebook in particular. Like it's a fun way to get a small little dose of somebody's stand up. Like it gets really addictive to just go click through all these different like little
Yeah,
stand up
I don't
clips.
want to get that addiction. That's why I don't click on
Yeah.
those. I don't want to
Yeah.
get addicted to doing that, because I've
Well, I'm
seen.
not addicted. Like I can't. It's like, oh my god, I can't go a single day without it. But it's kind of fun sometimes. Just kind of get a little taste.
I
They
almost
get repetitive though because they follow an algorithm. So there's a lot of times where you'll just be watching like the same. I already saw this like a million times already. What can you recommend me a different stand up clip from a different stand up comedian?
I would almost like to pay somebody to like go back through all my old videos and like turn them into shorts, and have like all this bankable content, because you could take several of my videos and chop one video up into multiple shorts, but I don't have the time to do that shit. I mean, maybe if I sat down one day and did it, I could do like a whole TikTok channel, just having my shorts that lead to like the actual full video. I just got done watching this Matt Rife like little mini YouTuber documentary
God, that
thing.
guy.
Well,
I
he
don't like stand-up comedians where the majority of their set is just crowd work.
Yeah, he's got this like smooth guy energy where he's all like, I'm a ladies' man and I know it. And dude, stand-up comedy is born out of pain. It's not born out of confidence. All the best stand-up comedians are people where their jokes are based from a place of pain or embarrassment, or it's taking the human condition and turning it upside down to where we can laugh at it, and that's why it's stand-up comedy can be so healing to the soul. When you go up there and your jokes are based off of like cockiness and like I'm the shit and I've got these little quips that I'm throwing at people, I'm just not interested in that. And the fact that you are so attractive really makes me doubt that you've had any experiences in your life that where like, so because some of my favorite comedy is like social, faux pas, or
Mhm.
like having a rough time interacting in society. And a lot of the stand-ups, like you look at Louis CK and it's like this fat bald ginger, old guy, he's gonna have some funny shit to say, like just
Yeah.
based on his appearance.
I mean, even Bill Burr in his prime, that
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
like these guys
Richard
had.
Pryor, when he started out, like his set that he did after, he lit himself on fire was hilarious. Like he was just willing to, like he lights a match on stage. It's like there's Richard Pryor running down the street.
Well, now everyone's saying that Matt Rife is like the Dane Cook of our generation or whatever, or not our generation, Gen Z's generation, I guess, because Dane Cook was our generation of. But the reason why Dane Cook did not get all of his fans because of his looks. I mean, the guy was like, I mean, I guess he was kind of all right looking. I'm not really, I don't really look at guys through that
He gets a
filter.
lot of he gets a lot of hate for like copying sets and things like that, which I think is kind of a
I don't believe Dane Cook ever copied a joke. I don't think he ever
yeah.
stole a joke. I mean, like the itchy asshole bit. I mean, dude, like everybody's had that experience at one
Yeah.
time or another in their life. That is not
I
unique
think
to.
Dane, his first two set, like they were actually pretty damn funny, and I think he became popular because I think he was also a younger stand-up
Well,
comedian, so I think that
he
connected with a certain audience.
it's not even that
And
he was younger. He was around the same age as Bill Burr, because all those guys came up together.
mhm,
What set Dane Cook apart and why I liked Dane Cook when I was a teenager was because he talked the way that me and my friends talk.
yeah, there you
And
go.
all the other
Yeah,
stand-ups were they were adults, or we perceived
mhm.
them as adults, and they talked about adult shit. But Dane Cook had this very young, youthful attitude about him, and
So
he
the
literally,
personality, his
yeah,
personality
like he joked in the same
was
exact
different.
cadence and words that me and my friends joked around in, and it's like, wow, this guy gets it. Like he gets how
Mhm.
young people like joke around, and that's why I like Dane Cook so much. But the problem with that forming that kind of niche is that as you get older, you become more sophisticated in your tastes, and Dane Cook, you know, if he doesn't if you don't evolve correctly, which I don't think Dane did, then people just grow tired of your style, and it's like, okay, you're still
Yeah.
yelling and making animal noises and fart jokes, whatever.
I think an interesting, parallel with Dane Cook is Ryan Reynolds. 'Cause they kind of, were actors around the same time. I don't think Ryan ever really tried stand-up. I don't know whether or not that's true or not. They had similar sort of vibes to them. And Ryan, if you think about it, like, I don't think he's changed that much when it comes to his persona or his personality or even really his range as an actor, but he just found a certain niche that really worked and clicked with a lot of people. Um,
Yeah,
I
I don't
definitely think
know.
Deadpool, like, totally resurrected his career. Like, without Deadpool, I don't think he would even be getting nearly as many roles
What
as
had
he
he
is
even
now.
done before Deadpool? That's all I know him
He was
from.
in Waiting, Van Wilder.
Oh, right, yeah, Van Wilder. Which I did not know this, but apparently Van Wilder was based off the life of Bert Kreischer when
Mhm.
he was going through his party guy stage in Florida when
And
he
he
went
did a movie this year called The Machine, based
dude.
on his
I'm
whole
so sick of hearing about
machine
Bert Kreischer.
and the
Like,
machine.
dude, like this YouTuber called Porcelain did a whole documentary
Uh-huh.
called Try Hard, Bert Kreischer story, and just beautifully points out how like the guy just lies constantly. Like
Uh,
anything that anybody brings up, like on a podcast, Bert Kreischer will be like, "Dude, I actually knew a guy who did that," or like, someone brought
mhm.
up getting struck by lightning. He's like, "Dude, I know a guy who got struck by lightning 3 times," which like the probability of that is just next to impossible.
It's like you
Um,
just read an article about a guy who got struck by lightning
yeah,
3
or you just
times.
fucking made it up. Bert
Yeah.
Kreischer is so fucking annoying, and for whatever reason, the YouTube algorithm has decided that he must be on my feed. Like I must see more of Bert Kreischer all the times. Like there's like I made a video about this a while ago, but there's like four like comedians that YouTube has
Mhm.
decided that everyone needs to see, and it's like Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer, um, Theo Vaughn, and Bobby Lee, and like you
Mhm.
might could throw like Brandon Schaub, Joe Rogan, and that other dickwad
I
in
mean,
there.
Bill Burr, they'll probably, promote because he's doing a movie for Netflix, I think.
Well, Bill Burr, he doesn't really go on to a lot of podcasts, and when he
Mhm.
does, it can go
Yeah,
bad very quickly.
the H3H3 one.
Yeah, that one, he was on Theo Von's podcast, and he just,
S
like
Yeah.
Theo was being really awkward, first of all, and Bill's kinda like he's kinda like an attack dog. If you
Theo
see
was the guy with, like, the mullet, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
He's a good old boy who just, "I don't know, man. I'm just a good old boy. I don't know nothing. I mean,
I tried watching some of those clips. I'm like, I don't get the appeal,
he
but,
gets on my fucking nerves, dude. That guy gets on my goddamn nerves." But he
Does
was
he remind you too much of somebody who lives in
yeah, just people
right
down
around your way in Florida?
yeah, you know, he reminds me of all my dad's friends, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, like, Bill Burr was on his podcast, and Theo was asking Bill, in all fairness to Bill, Theo was asking Bill Burr some really dumb questions because
Mhm.
Bill Burr's into flying helicopters now, and Theo Von's like, "Do you keep a gun in your helicopter?" And Bill's like, "No, I don't keep a gun in my helicopter." What kind of questions that? He's like, "I'd keep a gun in my helicopter if I had one." And it's like, can you get this guy off his own show, please, and just have Bill? Like, Bill does best
Yeah.
in podcast form when he's just rambling to himself. I don't know
Mhm.
how he has the schizophrenic ability to do that, but he literally works best when he's just rambling to himself. Like, he's
Yeah,
not
speaking of podcasts, it's like I'm just wondering like what some of these actors from yesteryear, like how would they do in podcasts? Like if Robert Stack was around in the podcast,
well, they would treat
era.
it like a talk show. They would go on there and they
Yeah.
would promote their movie. They wouldn't speak too much about their personal life. That's how it was for 50 or
Mhm.
60 years. People would go on talk shows and they would have their talking points that they wanted to speak about, and it was fake as fuck, and it was the only time you got to see your favorite celebrity, so you just kind of had to put up with it.
Yep.
And that was just what people were used to back
Johnny
then.
Carson and,
Dick
Jay
Cavett, Johnny
Leno.
Carson, and David Letterman, all of them. Now, as the talk show form started to die out, like people like Conan and guys like that, Eric Andre, they kind of like they opened it up to where it was less phony, but it was still, they're promoting a book or whatever.
Especially when it comes to like the celebrity stuff. Like
Yeah.
and then Jimmy Fallon comes in, with Jimmy Kimmel, and then it's more sort of the fake stuff and
What was great
uh
about podcasts, though, when they started getting bigger, especially when they started doing the video portions of it, is now finally you get to see people who don't have an agenda. They're just going on the podcast just to go on there, like Joe
mhm.
Rogan. That was why Joe Rogan's podcast blew up because it was
Mark Maron was one of the first as well.
yeah, Mark Maron, although I didn't quite enjoy Mark Maron's interview style, he was very big on getting into
Uh-huh.
their childhoods and what they
Yeah.
do as a kid. And it's like, dude, literally with audiobooks, I will sometimes skip entire portions of their childhood. I want to know about just before they got famous, when they got famous, and then the downfall when shit started going south and they became not so much famous or they just fell off completely. Like that's the arc that I'm interested in. I don't give a fuck about their childhood because their childhood could be pretty much anyone else's childhood. It's like, oh, you went and played in the yard and then you fell and broke your arm that one
Yeah.
time.
I kinda feel that way. I'm reading a book about In Living Color. It's called Homie, Don't Play That. And, the first 2 or 3 chapters is a lot about, the Wayans, brothers and them growing up in different, areas of the United States and being poor and all of this other stuff, and I get it. It's trying to, really flesh out them as people, but
Yeah,
it just felt like they went on a little bit too long with it, and I kinda started to lose interest in the book because it was just like, "Okay, when are we gonna get to actually talking
right.
about the show?"
Yeah, so
And,
imagine
like,
so
getting
imagine
to that
that
portion.
and all of that is the WTF podcast with Mark Maron. I mean, not so I will say Mark Maron had some legendary episodes. The Carlos Mencia episodes are iconic.
Mhm.
It's a two-parter. I highly recommend listening to those two parts. And then the other one was
And that was after he was essentially ostracized completely
for years he had been
from
like ostracized from the comedy community. And Marin apparently had always had decent experiences with Carlos. So he wanted to get to the bottom of all the joke thievery because Mark Maron's always seen Joe Rogan as kind of a bully, like a jock, like, jockish type bully. So he wasn't necessarily sympathetic to Joe Rogan when Rogan called Mencia out in front of everybody at the Comedy Store, in that video, that iconic video where Rogan literally gets up on stage while Carlos is telling jokes and calls him out in front of everybody. So Marin had Carlos Mencia on his podcast, and for the first episode, Marin was kind of throwing him some softballs, and Carlos was kind of, like dazzling him and being very gregarious and all that. So, but after the episode, Marin's talking about, there was just something about how Carlos was acting. I felt a little too massaged by how he was acting. It didn't sit right with me. So then I decided to actually hit up the Latino comics and see what they had to say, go into their community and get their take. And he had like 3 Latino comics on for part 2, and they all went into it. They talked about, bro, I was on tour with Carlos, and I did a bit, and it did okay, but then Carlos said, here, this is how it's done, and he did my same exact bit, but since he's Carlos Mencia, he was able to get more laughs and yada yada yada, and it was a whole thing. And there was a whole instance where George Lopez like confronted Mencia in a restaurant, and he's like, hey, don't do my fucking bit, and they almost got into it. So then he has Carlos back on the show, and now the energy's different, and he's like grilling him, and he's like, yo, like, what the fuck? And I highly recommend the 2-parter. The other one, legendary Marin one, was Dane Cook. Mark Maron always hated Dane Cook for the same reasons that all the other hipster comedians hated Dane. They didn't feel like he deserved his success. They thought he was hacky. And so he had Dane Cook on there. And Dane Cook shares this, what's become now a legendary story of Steve Byrne, this other comedian who was coming up. And Dane Cook was talking about how he felt like Steve Byrne was stealing his essence as a comedian. And that's the term he used. He's like, Steve, I just feel like you're being me. You're not being you. Like you're using you're stealing my essence. And that kind of became like a meme, because it's like, really, dude, you're going to say someone stole your essence? It was pretty cringe. So everyone was clowning on Dane for that. So then Mark, it sounds like Mark and Dane almost get into a fight at one point, because Mark's like, I just feel like at certain times you're probably a huge asshole to work with or something like that. And Dane's like, do you have a glass of water? No, I'm going to need a glass of water because, if we're going to get into this, he's doing his Dane thing. So then the second part, Mark gets Steve Byrne on the podcast and gets his side of the story. And Steve's story is wildly different than Dane's version. He's like, he invited me to his house, and he's like, you're stealing my essence. And I'm like, dude, how am I stealing your essence? He's like, you're dressing like me. You're talking like me. He's like, dressing like you. I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt, dude. Like, how is that dressing like you? And
like, this isn't some single white female shit, dude.
At the end of the conversation, according to Steve, Dane like closes his eyes and starts rubbing his fingers together. And he's like, when I'm in LA, I feel like I'm absorbing all of LA's energy, and I'm giving it back to the people. Maybe this isn't your time to be in LA right now, Steve. And it was just like, wow, you have completely lost the plot. Yeah. So I would say those are some of the best Mark Maron episodes to listen to. The octane in the tea is pretty high in those episodes. Yeah.
As you can see, folks, we ran out of really things to talk about when it comes to the Unsolved Mystery special. We're just talking about other random stuff.
Yeah, but see, this is what I want the new podcast to be. I like pop culture shit. Like, we're not, like, I don't want it to be where we have to watch this long thing and talk about it. Like, I don't want to have to watch a movie and then make notes and then talk about it, because essentially it's the same shit that we did with the Unsolved Mysteries, but we're just doing like
Well, I mean,
movies and stuff.
you could still watch something, but then you could just have a opening to just kind of take the conversation to wherever it
I
ultimately
want to do
winds
like
up
something like
going to.
podcast, like the problem with podcasts in 2023, and then we can just go from there. Or like I don't know, a
I do
fucking
like the Spike TV idea, though. I think that's
no, I
pretty
think
fun.
that is a good idea. I do like that idea. Just talk about, but I would like to just have a list or talk about the network that used to exist,
Yeah.
the
Just
problematic nature of said
yeah. Yeah.
channel, and then talk about some of the awful shows that were
Yeah.
on
Exactly.
on that network, which is where the whole awful
Well,
Dennis
there probably
Farina,
were some horrors on there, that's for sure.
yeah, to appeal to men. I think Family Guy had it best, where it was like they were mocking it, and like Peter and Brian are watching the TV, and it's only showing it from like the TV's perspective. So you only
Hmm.
see Peter and Brian, you don't see what's on TV. It's like
Yeah.
Spike, television for men. It's like cracking open a beer, a fart, a girl going, ah, and like,
That really is like that's Mansers. Like that
yeah.
show Mansers is literally that with this obnoxious narrator. Like can a fart kill you? You know that kind of
Uh-huh.
it's just
Yeah. Wasn't that show like 100 Ways to Die on there?
oh, A Thousand Ways to Die. Yeah, I still like that show though. It's morbid as hell and it was so overly sensationalized. Like a lot of the supposed real deaths, like a lot of it was just fabricated for entertainment. Some of that did happen, but not necessarily the way that it is shown in an episode. Um
I'm just like kicking myself right now that we never did the podcast in this format. Like,
hey,
what the fuck?
what are you gonna do? Like you can't
We
go back in time.
we got into it so early that people weren't putting podcasts on YouTube like they are now.
No,
Like it
no,
was,
no.
dude, literally back in, believe it or not, back in 2016, I would say like 90% of podcasts were audio only. There
Mm-hmm.
was that was why it was a podcast, because it you had an iPod, and that it originated off of iPods, I believe. And it was like this exclusive thing where it was like a radio show, but it was
Yeah.
like anyone could do one.
And now like the iPod itself is, people don't use standalone MP3 players. They use
No,
their phone.
no, yeah. I mean, even the
They
thought of,
stream music, even though the music quality isn't necessarily better. Like you could get better quality of music if you actually buy the album and play it in FLAC, for instance. But
I
no.
just got my record player set up, and it's such a it's such a head trip with me, because
Mm-hmm.
first of all, I'm playing the record player through damn good speakers, so that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Um, and it is the record, so there's the whole, well, it's the uncompressed, yada yada yada. But I gotta say, I think it's just the listening experience, and not necessarily the format. Because
Yeah.
if I hook up my phone to those very same good ass set of studio monitors, anything I play off of Spotify is gonna sound fucking good too.
Yeah.
The difference is gonna be so nominal, to where it's gonna be like, okay, well, am I really gonna cart around this goddamn turntable and
Well, I
this
mean, it's just
mixer?
like if you have a good setup like that, but it's if you don't, then you kind of get lesser quality. Like for instance, like I've cycled through so many dang headsets, and I just bought these headphones. These are XM4s from Sony, yeah, and the difference has been astronomical. And I've just been like, wow, okay, this was worth the money.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I will use these. Also, as somebody who wears glasses, like this is some of the most comfortable over-the-ear headphones I've ever owned, and I've been spending so much time and money trying to find ones that aren't so uncomfortable for
These are
long
comfortable.
periods of
These
time.
I see a lot of people use these, actually. They're
Yeah,
Audio
I've heard about
Technica.
those too. Yeah,
Yeah, these are comfortable. They're supposedly unbalanced, so there's no like they don't the factory tune them to have more bass or more treble.
Mm-hmm.
They're flat
Mm-hmm.
response headphones, which is what you want
Yeah.
when you're mixing and engineering. You don't want
Yeah.
any color added to the mix at all. Hey, you want to know something awesome that I did yesterday, and I don't know why or how the fuck it happened? I accidentally washed my AirPod Pros.
Oh.
Yeah, they're like $200.
Yeah, I did that with my Sony Walkman MP3 player. Like washed it and it got toast. It became just completely total toast, and then I had to buy another one. And I wish I still had my other one because the one that I got to replace it, the battery sucks.
What's crazy is like they still kind of work, but they don't sound quite right. And the right one
Yeah,
is kind of like only like
yeah,
40% capacity.
yeah. You're gonna have to buy another pair.
$200.
I know.
I already have so much debt
Yeah,
that I really can't be spending $200 on fucking. But I use those headphones at my karaoke gigs because it's got noise canceling.
yeah.
And
These
that's
have noise canceling too.
Yeah, like that shit's I mean, not only my gigs, but like when I'm mowing the lawn, when I'm vacuuming, all that shit comes that noise canceling is the bomb. We got DJ Donnelly. I think that's one of your people.
Hey, DJ.
I'm doing well, DJ. I think we're coming
Doing
to
all
the
right.
end. I think we're coming to the
Yeah.
end here. Um,
Got any final thoughts on that Unsolved Mystery special, Josh?
yeah, it was pretty good. I would recommend people watch it. I think there was a lot more of anticipation for a lot of the diehard
Mhm.
fans. I haven't really heard anyone else really talk about it that much. It well,
I've seen a lot of mixed feelings from a lot of fans of the show. Like, there's a lot of people who are like, "Well, this was disappointing because it wasn't as in depth as I was expecting, or it was too thin, or there wasn't enough of the discussion about other things." And I get that because I think we as fans of the show, like, we would watch a multi-part documentary series about the Unsolved Mysteries.
yeah, they could have
Uh, but I think that's not really what their intent was. They were doing I think it was an anniversary. It was like an anniversary. It was special. It was like, "Hey, thank you to the fans. Here's a little behind the scenes stuff. Here's some behind the scenes photos. Here's some fun outtakes with Robert Stack. Here are some fun stories from the set of Unsolved Mysteries. And
with all
here
that,
are some of the cases that you remember
yeah,
and
with all that
enjoy."
being said, though, I think this is the last piece of content we are ever going to get
Oh
from
yeah.
the executive producers of
Yes.
Unsolved. I don't think John and Terry are going to be making anything else after this.
No, I
I
don't
think this
either.
was the final curtain call. First of all, John
Yeah.
Cosgrove looks very elderly at this point, so he might not be around too much longer. I don't know, but yeah, I think this was the final farewell.
It was a send off. It was a love letter. I think that's really what the intent was, is it was kind of a love letter to the show and to the fans, but it just wasn't necessarily what some people might have expected. It wasn't like some in-depth, detailed documentary.
Right,
Um,
Eddie, you did not miss the live chat because you all you got to do is rewind it and bam, you're back at square
yeah.
one. And I'm acknowledging you right now, so technically you got all the benefits of watching the live
Yes.
chat. Um,
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, do we even know if they're being renewed on Netflix for like another chapter or whatever?
I don't think they are.
I haven't heard
I'm
anything
not
about that.
100% sure though. I know, didn't they just come out with a new one?
Their ratings couldn't have been great. When you have
No.
all these, I think they probably got a lot of I think their first episode probably got the most ratings because a lot of people, it has great, the cover art was great, the title
Yeah, and
was
it's true
great.
crime.
It's true crime. People are surfing through Netflix looking for something to watch. A show called Unsolved Mysteries pops up. That's
And
instantly going to
Netflix
grab people.
marketed it well. They put it on their homepage.
Yeah. So I know for a fact the first episode, and honestly, the first episode of the first chapter is probably the best episode on the whole series. The guy who just jumps off a building for no reason.
Mhm.
Um, And I think after that, the ratings just took a nosedive because they saw that this for a true crime show, this is kind of boring. Like I've seen way better true crime shows out than this. And I mean, I hate to keep bringing it up, but Dateline NBC, like with Keith Morris as the narrator, or Josh
Yeah, it
Makowitz,
seems
or
like the last thing that happened was the 9-episode run in October, November of last year. And there
yeah,
hasn't been any announcements or
they
anything
didn't pick up
about,
the ratings were so bad they probably didn't pick it up for that reason.
I mean, the amount of streams probably, because
Yeah,
Netflix ratings are different.
man, I wish there was some way to hack into the mainframe and see what the views all these videos get on there.
What, all the views certain shows? There are,
Yeah.
I think there is something that tracks that.
Well, I mean, yeah,
Because I've
but
seen
it's not available to the public though.
No, but I've seen websites track it for certain shows and certain films. Like they did that for like stuff that's streamed on HBO Max. So they did like they did some research to see like how many people watched this certain film.
Because
But
I'm sure some of those documentaries get in the probably like close to maybe not a billion, but
I
you
would
know,
say one of the most successful documentary series, sadly, probably for Netflix, was Tiger King
no,
during the
by
pandemic.
far that became a national like treasure there for a little bit, and it was like right during the pandemic where people had to stay in, and
Hmm.
that's silly little documentary just annoys me. I did not watch the second part.
I didn't watch the second either, and I liked the first documentary more than you did.
Yeah, I
And I don't
didn't.
think the second one did nearly as well.
I just thought it was stupid. All right. Well, I think that's about it. Coming in at 2 hours here. Glad I don't have to worry about editing this in. Well, no, I do because I'm pulling the audio from it, but I don't have to edit it because I didn't say anything that was editable.
No, no, but definitely
So
the flow of this is very different than a regular podcast because just kind of going off the cuff, kind of
I don't know.
not
I feel like we're
necessarily
kind
sticking.
of. Yeah, I mean, towards the middle, we went off the rails, but that's what
Yeah,
we were doing. That's what we were doing towards the end of the podcast. We were going off the rails and yakking. The only difference is I took it out of the show.
yeah,
This time I'm not
yeah.
because it's fuck you. Because fuck you. That's why. But yeah. So Eddie's last question here is: are you renaming the podcast? Well, we discontinued the
We
podcast.
don't. Yeah.
We discontinued the podcast. Aside from this, we came out of retirement for this because we couldn't not talk about the 30th anniversary.
Oh, definitely. We had to talk about the
Have to
special.
talk about it. But yeah, probably starting in the new year, we'll do some kind of a pop culture based thing, and I want it to be online on YouTube. I'll think about the SoundCloud bit because I'm still having to pay $15 a month for a podcast we're not even doing anymore. And I don't know if I stop paying, if they'll keep the episodes up,
They
or if I
probably won't.
yeah, because that's the only reason I'd keep paying is because like I don't want to
Your
lose.
microphone is.
Oh, is it cutting out?
I don't hear anything, but that might be on my end. Hold on.
Okay. Can you hear me now? This has got to be entertaining to the audience.
Yeah, ran my bat. It's out.
Oh,
I don't have any power.
Oh, okay.
No power.
All right. Well, in that case, okay. Oh, Max owns power, so we'll end the podcast now. Oh, okay. I see private chat. All right, I'm surprised. I'm surprised we still have 6 people watching this after that whole technological failure. This is the end of the live stream. Thank you, Mike, for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, for joining in. My headphones are dead, so this is super awkward. But thanks to Josh for having me, and thanks for hanging out with us. And we'll keep you updated on the new podcast in the future. See ya.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's Mike for you, and I am kicking him out of the studio. But all right, guys, thank you for watching, and until next time, have a good rest of your night, because that's how I end my YouTube channel, and this is on my YouTube channel. It's not how I end the podcast, but anyway.